time has finally come where we look at Tua Tagovailoa's 2022 season and assess it. What is up, Finn fans? This video I've been looking forward to, but I've also been dreading, because I know it is a very, one more time, very decisive topic. I can't even talk about it. And that has to do with Tua Tagovailoa. You got the people who love Tua. You got the people who do not like Tua. And when I say do not like Tua or hate Tua or this, I don't mean him personally. But there is a huge bias and there's a huge separation when it comes to Tua Tagovailoa. And then you have the people in the middle, right? And with the people in the middle, if you say good things about Tua, boom, you're a Tua-neer, you're a Tua-anon, you're a Tua-de-doop, you're a toot-toot-toodly-doop. The names that have been made up are just ridiculous. Or if you are critical of him and want to see better, boom, you're a hater. Why don't you like Tua? This, and that. And unfortunately, I am in the middle. And I've been called a Tua-neer, Tua-anon. You know, you defend Tua in the slightest from people who say he never does things when he does, or this and that. Then that one side that doesn't like Tua just throws you in that category that you're Tua-anon, Tua-neer, toodly-doot-doot-to-do. But then again, I've done multiple film breakdowns, and we're going to talk about this. I've done, the Patriots game. I've talked about the 49ers game. I talked about the Chargers game. I talked about the end of the Packers game where he played bad. You get thrown to the other side. So I will say this, and I will laugh. Regardless of what I say in this video, I will be labeled something that I am not. But I love doing these videos, and this is a very big subject and a very big topic we need to talk about. So let's jump into it. So I have a ton of, what we're going to do is we're going to look at his stats. We're going to start by looking at his stats. And then I have some advanced stats. And then we're going to go game by game. And then I'm going to tell you my thoughts on Tua in 2023. And I'm going to give you guys my idea on that. Now, PFF every year comes out with like a quarterback catalog type thing. Let me get the exact name for you guys. And when that comes out, I'm also going to make a video about that. It's called the Quarterback Annual. And they come out with one every year. And they haven't done it yet for this year. They have last year's. So when that comes out, we're also going to do that. But let's jump into some of his stats. So obviously you need to see my giant fat face. But I'm going to point at the stat we're looking at and his ranking and all that stuff. So Tua played, they say 13 games. It's more like 13 and a half games. Yardage-wise, Tua is ranked 12th with 3,548. It's pretty good. Again, we'll compare him to last year. Yards per attempt, he is ranked number 1. That is much better than last year. Touchdowns, he is ranked 12th with 25. It's on par. If you guys go back and look at where I said his assessment and where I wanted him to be, if you watch the year review or the stats review I did a few weeks ago, I talked about I wanted him at 30. He's at 25. That's not bad. With 8 interceptions, I think if I try to... Yeah, he's not bad with the interceptions. Obviously, these guys barely threw the ball. You got Joe Flacco and stuff, but he's not bad in that aspect. Now, big-time throws. When it comes to just how many big-time throws, now, obviously, there's a percentage of big-time throws, but when it comes to just big-time throws, he's tied for 16th with 28. Yeah, you can still see it. But percentage takes the attempts and then divides it. So his percentage of big-time throws is 15th with 4.3. So he's not taking as many big shots as like Josh Allen, who's number 1, Lamar Jackson, Geno Smith, Aaron Rodgers, Mitch Trubisky's up there. But he is taking more attempts than he did last year. Turnover-worthy plays. He is ranked 9th. Tied for 9th with 19. And again, if you're trying to take these big time throws and you're trying to, throw it into tight coverage and stuff, you're going to throw some turnover worthy plays. And obviously this incorporates some of the dropped interceptions and all that stuff. But you take this and you divide it, or you do whatever with the attempts, and he is ranked, his percentage is 7th. So he's pretty high on the turnover worthy plays. Again, lucky for him, some of those interceptions were dropped. Again, he has a low interception to touchdown ratio. but he's up there. You know, Josh Allen's also up there. Justin Fields is also up there. Zach Wilson, Tyler Heineke being 1 and 2. It's not surprising to me. But this is something he does need to work on, is his ball placement. Now, ADOT, it's average depth of target. He is up there. He is number 3 with 10.1. So that's average depth of, you know, target he throws the ball to. And again, that was the problem with like the San Fran game, and that was a problem with the Chargers game, where he was trying to push the ball too much when he didn't need to. Drops, 8 adjusted. I think this is just this is adjusted completion percentage, the percent of aimed passes thrown on target completion plus dropped divided by aimed. So if we do that, I think I don't think he's that high on that one. No, he's all the way down here in 24. He's down here 24 on that one. So drops. He is 13th, tied for 13th in the NFL with drops. But again, drop percentage, which is the percentage of the attempts by the drops, he is ranked 13th, tied 13th with 7.2 drops. Time to throw. Now, this is what I found this very interesting. Time to throw. And if we look at time to throw, it is average time to throw on all dropbacks. So it's not the time it takes him to get the ball out of his hand, because he could do screens, he could do, you know, RPOs, he could do. That's not what this is counting. This is counting on his drop back. How much time does he have to get to throw the ball before the pressure gets him? So it's time to throw. And this is very interesting, right? Skylar Thompson, 3 minutes to throw the ball. He's had 3 minutes to throw the ball. And if you look for Tua, all the way down here, 2.52 seconds. So Tua's ranked 37th when it comes to how much time he has to throw the ball. But Skylar Thompson is 5th. I didn't see that stat before today. That is incredibly interesting to me. First downs, when it comes to how many first downs did Tua get with his arm, 14th in the NFL with 165. And then his NFL passer rating, he is 2nd behind Brock Purdy. I think they might be. See, this is where you'd have to come in here and adjust the minimal dropbacks, but still, because yeah, I think when it comes to a certain amount of dropbacks, 2 is number 1 and Patrick Mahomes is number 2. But still, that's pretty flipping good. And then when it comes to the PFF passing, he was number 1 for a while. And again, I think they're incorporating, but now he's 4th. Still pretty good. Now we're going to go to some advanced stats. And these I found to be very interesting. Now, some of these, you know, pass attempts, deep ball attempts, he's 13th in the NFL. That's not surprising. Red zone attempts, he's 19th. They didn't get down there that much towards that losing streak. Pace of play, again, how quick is it? Game scripts, protection rate, 4th in the NFL. Passing productivity, again, this is yards, air yards. Money throws, he's 2nd in the NFL in money throws. A pass required exceptionally skill or athleticism, as well as critical throws executed in clutch moments. Number 2 in the NFL in money throws. Pressure throws, he is 21st in the NFL. Danger plays, a play in which the quarterback took unnecessary risk and could have resulted in a turnover, he's 13th. Again, that's something he needs to work on. He needs to get better at. Interceptable passes, he is 8th. Again, something he needs to work on. Passing touchdowns, he is 8th. Efficiency, yard per attempt, is number 1. Adjusted yards per attempt is still number 1. Air yards per attempt, number 3. He was taking those shots down the field. He is check down 2 is not a thing in 2022. Like, you could just see hit. Best ball points added, he's 11th. And then they talk about fantasy. I don't give a crap about fantasy. Efficiency, accuracy rating, 7th. True completion percentage. Completion percentage factoring out unpressured throwaways and drop back passes, he is 20th. Deep ball completion, he's number 1. Again, he was very effective with the deep ball. Deep ball completion percentage, 7th. Play action completions, 13th. Red zone completion, you know, once we got in the red zone, he was great. Clean pocket completion percentage, that dropped, right? And I thought that's very interesting. He's 24th. True passer rating, which quarterbacks factoring unpressured throwaways and dropped passes. He's 11th. QBR, he's 3rd. And then these are all like fantasy drops. He's 18th. Receivers yard per depth, 52nd. Receiver yard per depth per target. I thought that was, this one I found incredibly interesting. Receiver target separation, average yards of separation between a quarterback's receiver and their assigned defender the moment the pass arrives at any point behind the line of scrimmage. 49th. Everyone was talking about Tua has all these receivers that get all these yards and blah, 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 this, and that, the distance and all this stuff. 49th. 49th. You got red zone efficiency here, second, deep ball, fourth. Again, it's kind of redundant, same thing over and over again. This one I found interesting when it comes to man versus zone coverage. He faced man coverage 48.5% of the time, which is 26th in the NFL. He didn't face it as much, but he still faced man coverage a lot. He faced zone more, about 3% more. His completion percentage versus man is 7th in the NFL. He actually has a worse completion percentage versus zone than he does versus man. His passer rating is worse versus man. It's number 1 versus zone. It's number 3. He does better versus man. His accuracy rating versus man, which is accuracy rating, grades the accuracy on each throw on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 representing at least accurate, 10 representing the most accurate. Number 1, zone. Number 2 in the NFL. So again, I found that incredibly interesting that, this style of offense, we probably predicate and do better against the zone. He does better against man. And then they talk about rushing, and rushing doesn't matter. Now we'll look at it by game by game. Now PFF, some people like it, some people don't. Some people use it to, if it feeds their narrative. Some people don't like it if it doesn't feed their narrative. I'm going to talk about it in both aspects, right? Because you start with the New England Patriot game. He had a 69.7 completion percentage, threw for 270 yards and a touchdown. Go back and watch my recap. I said that he was off. I said that if he plays like that, I don't know how many games we're going to win. And PFF kind of was in. Now, I wouldn't put him in the 50s in that game. I'd probably give him like 60 to 70s in that game. But he was off. He was very off in that game, and I talked about that. He looked rusty, and then all of a sudden he blew up, right? You have the Baltimore Ravens game, went off. The Buffalo Bills game, went off. Look at this Cincinnati game. And this is where I find it interesting, right? Because his rating, his NFL rating, was a 52.7 in the Cincinnati game. But they gave him a 76.6. I felt like that interception in that Cincinnati game was dumb. Like, he got hurt in the Buffalo game, and I was like, why are you going to try to attempt that deep pass? They gave him a higher grade with a lower NFL rating. They gave him a higher grade than 104 against the Patriots. See what I mean? Like, they try to take intangibles and add them in and do this, and that. But I find that incredibly funny that a lot of people think that before he got injured in the Cincinnati game, he had a horrible game. When he went out, we were losing. Yeah, it's because Chase Edmonds dropped a perfect touchdown and that went in his hands. 2 drops. 3 drops against Baltimore. I would love to know what his passing and his percentage and all that stuff is quarter by quarter, because a lot of people like to think it was just the fourth quarter he was doing well, but it was more than just the fourth quarter that he was doing well. I want to see quarter by quarter. I think at Pittsburgh, again, Pittsburgh is another game where he wasn't great. He had a 92.7. See, look, this is what I'm talking about with PFF. You have to take it how you want it, right? Because he had a 92.7 against Pittsburgh when he had a touchdown, no interceptions, played the full game, 261 passing yards, and 60% completion percentage. Obviously, everyone talks about the dropped interceptions. But he had a worse passer rating, but a better PFF grade against Cincinnati. Then he had Detroit, one of his best games. And it always makes me laugh. And I'm not going to say it anymore. But look at what Josh Allen, look at what Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Hurts, Fields, all these quarterbacks did against Detroit and Chicago and the Cleveland Browns. And look at what Tua did. His stats were ridiculous this 3-game stretch. An absolute ridiculous. 96.8. He had 138 points. Like this 3-game stretch between Detroit, Chicago, and Cleveland, I was like, he is on the money. Like New England, I wanted him to do better. Baltimore, there we go. Buffalo, there we go. Like the Buffalo game, his resiliency, especially on that 3rd and 22, I was like, yes. And then Cincinnati, he gets hurt. I'm like, damn, we would have beat Cincinnati if he played. Pittsburgh, he comes back, he's rusty, man. And then Detroit, he's on. Chicago, he's on. Cleveland, he's on. I'm like, this guy is on fire. And after the Cleveland game is when they started talking about he's in the MVP category, rightfully so. Might have been premature, but after the Cleveland game, his stats were ridiculous. Look at his passer rating for those 3 games. Absolutely ridiculous. And it's funny, Cleveland, he had one of the less times in the pocket with 2.35 seconds. All of the games he played, the least amount of time was against Cleveland, and it was probably one of his best games. Cleveland and Detroit, 2.46, 2.35. Went off. And then we had Houston, did well. Again, not crazy. 299 yards, 61.1 passer rating, 1 touchdown. They took him out 1-2 series after halftime because Teron Armstead got injured, 96.9 passer rating. So we're at 8-3 here. Then we head to the West Coast, and that's where the wheels fell off this sucker. And again, just to skip ahead a little bit, Buffalo, 234, 2 touchdowns, no interception, 104 passer rating. They think he did worse against Buffalo than against Pittsburgh. Do you see what I'm like? PFF, I don't know how I feel about PFF in that aspect of it. But again, San Francisco, there was wide open guys he was missing. He was just so off with the San Francisco game. Wide open guys that were like, he was on fire for Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland. And you can say, well, San Francisco was a better defense. They were open. The guys were open. And all of a sudden, something happened after that Houston Texans game, and he was just off. And then the Chargers took away what he wanted, and instead of making adjustments, instead of stop trying to force the ball, he kept forcing the ball. Another bad game by him. Buffalo, I don't think was a bad game by him. I think I liked the Buffalo game and then Green Bay game. The first half of the Green Bay game, he was on fire. And then the second half, not even really second half, the 4th quarter, he lost the game. Tua lost the game in the 4th quarter. So again, you look at his season, and even if you look at his passer rating, Cincinnati, I wouldn't even say 92.7 is a bad passer rating. Cincinnati, San Fran, Chargers, and then Green Bay. He had 4 bad games, in my opinion. Again, you might say to yourself, you don't know what you're talking about, but in my opinion, the bad games, he had 4. 49ers, Chargers, second half of Green Bay, and I would say Pittsburgh was a bad game for him. I would say New England was an okay game, and I think Baltimore, Buffalo, I think Cincinnati would have been a good game if he never got injured. Buffalo, Baltimore, both Buffaloes and both Buffalo Bills games, I can't talk, were good games, in my opinion. The games where I was like, and Houston were good games. The games where I'm like, this is what I needed to see from Tua to have like feel really comfortable, were Baltimore, Detroit, Chicago, and Cleveland. Those 4 games were his elite games. And then he got injured again. So again, real quick before we get out of here, or not we get out of here, but before I make myself bigger and we talk about everything. Last year, right, he played 13 games last year, give or take. He played 13 games this year, give or take. Big jump in production, 2,653 yards to 3,548. Big jump, 9 more touchdowns. He went down in interceptions, very good there. His completion percentage went down by 3 points. That's where it's not good. Big time throws went up. Again, he was taking those chances. His turnover-worthy plays actually went down. He did better this year at not having those turnover-worthy plays. So again, he got better in this new system. The average depth of target went up. His drops, unfortunately, went up, which doesn't help. His time in the pocket went down. How is that possible when he had one of the worst offensive lines last year? But his first downs went up from 145 to 165. So now here's my thoughts on Tua Tagovailoa in 2022. Like I said, he had those 4 elite games. He had a bunch of good games against Buffalo, against New England. So that's what, 7? He had 7 good games. And he played 13. Is my math right? That's right. Good against New England. Good against Pittsburgh. Again, they weren't, I'm not saying they were horrible, but they weren't, they were good. Good against Houston. So he had 3 good games. He had the 4 elite, which were bring us up to 7. And then Cincinnati, in my opinion, that's obsolete. He didn't finish it, so I'm not going to really say anything about that one. Green Bay, Chargers, San Fran were bad. He had 3 bad games, in my opinion. Again, you can say you're dumb. New England was a bad game. Pittsburgh was a bad game. You don't know what you're talking about. But in my opinion, a 92.7 passer rating and a 104.4 passer rating isn't a bad game. Is it a good game? Is it an elite game like he had? No. But I digress. 2022, I think if Tua never got injured, and I think if Tua never had his concussion and was able to play against the Jets, the Vikings, and finish his game against the Cincinnati Bengals, I think he would have done much better. The fact that he wasn't able to play the Jets at all this year, that was a big test for me. I wanted to see what he did against Sauce Gardner. I wanted to see what he did against that Jets defense. The fact that he couldn't play New England again, he was 4-0 against New England, hurt. I think if he played the full season, I think the Dolphins' record would have been different. I think we would have made it to 11 wins, minimum. I think we would have made it. I think we would have beat the Vikings because the Vikings, we made them punt 10 times, and he was on fire with that offense. And I think we would have beat the Jets because having Teddy get hurt right in the beginning of the game and then throwing Skyler in there before the wheels fell off and we gave him 21 points in the 4th quarter, it was a very close game, and I think Tua would have won that game. So, again, those are your 2 wins. I think the Vikings and the Jets. And then flip it over, they probably would have beat the Patriots again. So you got 3 wins, and you're probably looking at a 12-win team, probably fighting for the division. But here's the thing, right? I think Tua, the more he plays in the system and the more he plays with Bevel and the more he's with Mike McDaniel, I think he's only going to get better. Again, I showed you all the stats of him getting better. But here's my thing. Here's my biggest knock on Tua, and this has been my knock on Tua from jump. He can't stay healthy. Whether it was his rookie year where he had the hand injury, whether it was last year where he had the rib injury, or, I'm not going to, the finger one is weird to me because he's still the backup, but he still had the rib injury where he had to go on IR and we missed 4 games. And then Jacoby Brissett came in and crapped the bet on that. Or it's this year with the concussions. You can't depend on him. And that, the biggest ability is availability. And you can't depend on Tua. And that's where it hurts his stock when it comes to the future quarterback of the Miami Dolphins. Now, I'm not saying he's not going to be next year. Obviously, Mike McDaniel, Chris Greer came out and said that he's going to be on the team next year. He's going to be the starter. You can take that with however you want. My biggest knock on Tua, besides that skid against San Fran and the Chargers, like mentally what happened to him is his availability. That's where I'm like, hey, Doug, do you pick up his 5th-year option? If you're asking me right now, today, do I pick up his 5th-year option? No. Because I can't trust him to stay healthy for the full season. And for the Dolphins to win, they need him to stay healthy. They would have won this past playoff game if Tua was playing. As Buffalo Bill fans, they were afraid of Tua or Raheem Mostert playing. They thought if Tua and Raheem Mostert played, they would have probably lost that game. I've had conversation with Buffalo Bill fans on Twitter and in the comment section, and they felt Dan Mitchell even said it. Facing Tua, they were more afraid than facing Skylar Thompson. And again, let me preference this. I think Skylar Thompson has a bright future. I'm very excited to see his development. So again, my biggest knock on Tua is he's not dependable. He's not dependable. And that slump, what happened against San Fran and the Chargers? Is it because you were on the West Coast for 2 weeks? It's something you're going to have to get over. Buffalo Bill game showed me he could play in the cold. He could play in the snow. I'm not worried about that anymore. He had a good game against the Buffalo Bills in the cold, in the snow. Um, but it's his dependability. I don't know if I could depend on him. So again, you asking me right now, am I giving him the 5th-year option? No. And going into the 2023 season, they need to go and get a viable backup quarterback or a viable quarterback to compete with Tua to be a starter. Because he can't stay healthy. Like, do they go out and get a Derek Carr? And again, I'm going to throw names at you, and I'm not saying this is who I want. I don't even know what I want at this point. I'm still doing my assessments. But do they go out and get a Derek Carr? Do they go out and get a Baker Mayfield? Do they go out and get, these types of quarterbacks that aren't, they wouldn't consider themselves backups, but are going to come in and compete, and God forbid Tua gets injured again, we don't have that slump from Tua to Teddy. There was a huge drop in talent from Tua to Teddy, and we saw it with the 3-game losing streak, and then we saw it with the New England game, and we saw it in the playoffs. Huge drop. So, we have him under contract next year. We have to see, can he stay healthy? If he could stay healthy and play a full season, if I'm the GM, that's what I say to him. You have to prove to me in 2023 you could stay healthy and you could play a full season, because I think his numbers will show, and I think the team's winning will show that he deserves a contract. But if he can't stay healthy, and if he has another slump like the San Fran and the Chargers game, then he might not get that contract extension. And then what does that entail? I don't know. I'm not a future teller. But again, I think Tua had a good 2022. I think he went up in the stats he needed to. He went down in the stats he needed to. 81.4 passer rating. I showed you where that ranks. I showed you where he ranks in passing yards, all that stuff. But again, that San Fran game, that Chargers game, that worries me. His unavailability and not being able to be depended on worries me. So again, I'm not picking up his 5th-year option. I can't trust him to stay healthy. Comment below. Let me know what you think. What is your thoughts on the Tua's 2022 season? I think it was a good season. I think it would have been excellent if he didn't have that slump against San Fran and the Chargers. I think it would have been top notch. I think it would have been MVP worthy if he didn't get injured and have that slump. But unfortunately he did. So it was a good season. I think he had a good season. But again, I'm not giving him the 5th-year option. I can't depend on him to stay healthy. And that's my biggest knock on him. Comment below. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see you guys later today. I'm going to do my picks for the divisional round. And other than that, I'll see you Sunday. I'm going to be live for the Bills-Bengals game. But like usual, stay classy. No offense up.